Don't have a gavel, but that's the best I can do. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order this Mayor Commission work session. Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025, and it's 10:01 a.m. So let's dive right into the agenda. First item is a tree canopy assessment update. Victor or Ms. Johnson, you going to tee this off, or is Victor diving right into it?
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm going to allow Victor Carosi, our Director of Public Utilities, to tee up this item.
Good. Okay, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thank you first off, welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Mayors, Commissioner members, and Ms. Johnson, City Administrator. Victor Carosi, Utilities Director, and this morning I'm actually going to be sending off to our team for a little bit more information. But we really have is a follow-up. If you recall, back in May of 2024, the Office of Sustainability came to this team and discussed trees, really as we see our tree canopy, the intent of trying to understand how trees are in our community, what's happening with the trees, the amount of cover we have, and the various environmental benefits that trees can provide to our communities. That meeting that we had back in May of 24 offered opportunities of introduction of what's going on with our trees, and it was asked that we come back with some strategies on how we can do that. So today what we have is a brief presentation. Was generally prepared through our Office of Sustainability, and we have it led by Ms. Karen Firehawk. She's with the Green Infrastructure Center. She's the principal consultant in this matter, who's really been helping and a key driver of where we're going with the program and things that we'd like to introduce to the City Commission. I also have, who'll give a little bit more introduction, is Elaine Christian. She is with our Office of Sustainability and has been a part of this, along with a relatively newer employee, Miss Jean Corbett, who has come to us from, was it St. Louis? St. Louis a couple of months ago, and we welcome her to the city and her input as well. So with that, I'd like to just have a brief intro from Elaine. She'll set us off, and then we'll hear from Karen Firehawk. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Elaine Christian, Interim Sustainability Supervisor. The city's updated tree canopy report is a key initiative of the Office of Sustainability Action Plan. Expanding and protecting our urban forest is critical to reducing heat island effects, improving air and water quality, enhancing community health, and building resilience to climate impacts. The strategies outlined in this report will guide our efforts to reverse tree canopy loss and increase canopy overall throughout our city. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Karen Firehawk, Executive Director and co-founder of the Green Infrastructure Center, who will present the analysis and also share the strategies to help us meet this important goal. Karen?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back here. As was just stated, last time we were here, we talked about a canopy goal, and the mayor and commission specifically challenged us to come up with strategies to achieve that. Don't just give us a report, give us the strategies. So we're back with those. So I'm going to go very quickly through some of the maps because they'll be a bit of a refresher so that I can get as quickly as possible to the strategies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the canopy cover that you do have and just a quick highlight of some benefits, a new canopy goal for the city, and then strategies. All right, so let's get into the cover itself. All right, so there's many ecosystem services that trees provide, and ecosystem services are things that nature provides mostly for free that we benefit from. So clean air, lower respiratory distress in well-treated neighborhoods. There's actually less crime in well-treated communities. They also calm traffic, causing people to drive slower. So there's a whole host of benefits, and also for your climate resiliency goals as well. Trying to get to the next slide here. Okay, so for your city, and I know that's quite a lot of, it's hard to see the details, so we actually have a map at the end that we can zoom in if you want to look at a particular area. But excluding Grassy Waters Preserve, which is a major part of your city, the urban area is about 24% canopy cover. And if you were to include Grassy Waters, then you are at 34%. So last time I was here, you asked me Are you the highest canopy in the area? And yes, Grassy Waters makes you king of canopy, all right, or queen. So you have the most canopy. But what we're really concerned with is the day-to-day experience of businesses and citizens who are living downtown or living in a neighborhood. What's their experience? And that is more that 24% or less. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting the slide to go to the next one.
Can someone help her, please?
Now it went all of a sudden too fast. Hang on. I don't know, it's frozen. Trying to go there. All right, so canopy varies across the city. I don't know what this thing is. It's got a mind of its own. I'll just. Very big slideshow, I guess.
Is someone around that could provide us with assistance, tech?
I think Armando went into that, into the support room. Up here.
All right, I will just keep rolling with this, but yes, the slides are having trouble advancing. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of clean air benefits that are provided, and we actually calculated how much greenhouse gas pollutants, particulate matter that the trees take up, as well as carbon sequestered and carbon stored. So we actually know that the numeric value of all of the trees that are keeping your air clean. And then we can look at it by neighborhood, and this is a little color ramp, and the oranger or redder the neighborhood is, the lower the canopy. So trying to think about how we can bring that canopy up in some of these neighborhoods. All right, trees definitely cool the city, so we're going to look at a map of heat. So if we start to thinking about how much heat we have in the city, and we know Florida's hot, that's not news to anyone. But you can really see the cooling effects. If you look at Grassy Waters and you see those sort of cool green colors, that's telling you that that is really doing a great job to cool down the city. Any kind of water body, even Clear Lake, helps to cool your city down. But in the sort of experience of the more urban areas, it's quite hot. So we know that temperatures are increasing, but one of the things we can do is plant trees today to have shade for the future. And then we also looked at tree canopy cover by streets. So we looked at how well shaded the streets are. And so when you see red lines, those are streets that are not well shaded, followed by orange, followed by yellow. And why we did this analysis was, as you do not have unlimited funds and time, no city does, as you think about which streets should we target for the tree planting dollars that we may have, or where should we have tree giveaways, that lets us know if we want people to walk to school, walk to shops, walk to their job, we need to make it healthy and safe for them. So thinking about every street. And then trees also soak up a tremendous amount of rainfall. One mature tree can soak up several thousand gallons of water per tree per year. And so we also built a model for your city that shows how much water all the trees soak up across the city. Still clicking go. It's a very funny laptop. Okay. So what we've done, not just build a model, but we actually show where in the city you can plant to soak up the most rainfall. So again, with limited dollars available, and you want to be strategic and you want to end standing water, because we all know standing water brings the state bird, the mosquito. So we want to make sure that we can evaporate that water, and trees really act like straws to soak it up. So we've got a map of where we can plant for the most soaking up. And then we can also look at things such as how well treated are your parks. So for example, in Dreher Park, you have almost 13 acres that could be planted. And we're not recommending you plant every open space. People still want to throw a frisbee, they want to play sports. So we took a relatively conservative approach, but we do know all the spots on public land that you could plant. And then schools, that's another avenue for planting. It turns out actually that kids' IQ improves if they access green space about 20 minutes a day. So having trees at schools also helps with the air conditioning bills as well. And also private schools could be engaged to plant. To inform the plan that we developed, city staff took the maps to various events like the Green Market and other civic events, showed up with posters of the maps, asked people to comment. And so there's a rich set of comments in the back of our report. But one of my favorite ones I kind of liked is somebody said, I live in a condo, so I don't have a yard, but let me plant, I'll help you. So even those apartment and condo dwellers would love to get outside and help. So the goal in the plan, the goal is to have 25% canopy by 2035. That's what we're proposing, and that is a 1% increase in your canopy. 1% doesn't sound like a lot maybe, but that's more than 12,000 trees that would be proposed to be planted over the next decade. And about 2,500 roughly through the city giving away trees, and then encouraging and engaging the public in planting trees in their yards, because that's the easiest and cheapest place to plant a tree is in a yard. So let's talk about some of the strategies to maintain that 25% canopy. And before I go forward, just to remind you, last time I was here, we talked about the fact that according to a prior consultant study, you had lost about 6% canopy over a 5-year period. So just to maintain is a good goal, but we want to try to claw back some of that shade that we had. All right, so moving to the strategies, I'm not going to read them all out to you. You have the full report, which has all the details, but we'll go through the objectives. So we want to plant trees on municipal lands with the aim of achieving 12,620 trees over 10 years. So the city's responsibility would be about 2,500 trees or 252 trees annually. Target plantings to the hottest and least treed areas. So that's why you have that neighborhood map showing you your hottest streets and your hottest neighborhoods. Track them to monitor goals. And then most important, we are recommending that you consider hiring a community forester in the future. That person that can go work with neighbors, work with neighborhoods, work with local businesses, and encourage them to do that planting. And also follow up to make sure that that tree is still alive and thriving. So that will take a lot of public engagement, and I believe more than what your current staff capacity is. So just to let you know, I work with 115 cities over a 3-year period. And it's common when we start with them, they don't have an urban forester, but by the time we finish, they usually hire one because they realize they need that help. The second set of strategies,
For a moment,
Objective B. I'm
if
sorry.
I may,
Sure.
we do have a question from
Absolutely.
President Lambert.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I wanted to make sure I understood. Objective A, it says it would be the responsibility of the city to plant 2,524 trees, and then the first check mark is plant 252 trees.
Yes, and that's where it says parens city. That's per year.
But then the last sentence.
So within the city is the 2,000.
Okay, so even though it says the city's responsibility, but you don't mean the city planting that, you just mean within the city?
I'm saying the city will cause to be planted that many trees on city lands. And so that's why we've identified thousands of locations across the city where there is room to plant a tree.
Okay, so your recommendation is that the city oversee the planting of 2,500 trees, but the city would be responsible for planting 252?
Per year.
Okay.
Yeah. So we gave you a 10-year period we thought was reasonable in working with staff. And you did have a tree planting campaign in which you got 10,000 trees distributed to the community. What we don't have is a system to really track. Did they live? Did Bob mow over the tree by mistake? Those things happen. So making sure that you're tracking your goal, making sure you're hitting it. We've been giving away a lot of trees in the city. This would be a new approach, which is really tracking, monitoring, and accounting for it.
Now, are we making recommendations for the types of trees? Because we have had complaints about certain trees that, the roots are causing disruption on the streets. So are we making recommendations as to the types of trees that would be most compatible with our city and our neighborhoods?
That would come forward in the form of an ordinance, which would have trees that would not be appropriate for street trees, prohibited trees, and then trees that would be appropriate for open space or development projects.
Now, I know we will ultimately have to do that,
Yeah.
but is your report
The report,
making any recommendations about types of trees?
this report does not get into that, no.
All right, staff, are we going to come up with that information? Because I don't want to get a bunch of trees out there and then the wrong trees.
Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Warren and then Commissioner Peduzzi.
Sure.
Thank you. I think that I understand you. It's a 10-year plan for a total of 2,524 trees and to plant approximately 252 trees per year
Correct.
to come to that total. And my question is along the lines of what the mayor was asking. Because I think we all agree that there are tremendous benefits to the tree canopies, to the shade, to everything that the trees bring. My question is there a strategy for the maintenance so that the roots aren't overgrowing and that because as we plant these trees, there's a cost associated with the maintenance of that. There's a cost associated with the trimming, as well as an impact to the communities if the residents then become responsible for the trees.
Right. So for the resident themselves, if they're planting a tree in their yard, the cost to maintain that tree is relatively low. It's occasionally watering the tree, pruning it after it's 3 years old. These are relatively low costs. Last time we were here, we had a budget spreadsheet and we calculated the cost for the city to meet that goal. One of the things that we found in reviewing your contracts for people who do plant in your parks, that there wasn't an adequate watering contract in place, there wasn't adequate maintenance in place. So that's one thing that we did, was recommend, this is what you have to make sure that tree stays alive. So not to plant it, I believe the contract originally said 2 weeks of watering. And that's just not gonna get that tree to survive through a Florida summer necessarily. So we looked at all of that, and I was also tasked with coming up with recommended code changes. So I do have those, but not today, because today's meeting is, do you want to have a goal? And do you agree that we should improve our tree list, improve our codes, that type of thing? So you'll see several references coming up looking at code issues. I shouldn't say issues, that sounds negative. Needs.
Thank you. Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you. Just to clarify again,
Sure.
the 12,620 trees over a period of 10 years would include the city's responsibility and private entities' responsibility?
Yes.
Because it's just a little confusing the way it says the city's responsibility would be to plant 2,500 trees annually, but then it says 252 trees annually. But really the 2,500.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not that my over summarizing is not artful.
Right. So the 2,500 is the city and private entities.
2,500 is the city's goal over 10 years to plant. That works out to
And private.
the private goal is
2,500 per year. We as the city will plant
252.
specifically 252. That's what your thing says. Plant 252 annually.
It's confusing the way it's written.
500 trees annually as well.
It's confusing the way it's written.
You gotta plant a bunch of trees. Can y'all just clarify
in the
this? Come on, let's move on.
in the report where there's full sentences, I couldn't fit that all on this slide. It says it's 12,500
Staff, will you
trees.
clarify this and get it out to the commissioners, please? Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so the next objective is to encourage the private sector to plant and care for trees by planting approximately 1,000 trees annually for a total trees planted more than 10,000 trees on private property. So this is the private property side. The prior slide was the public side of the goal.
Okay, wait a second then.
Exactly
We got to
what
go
I'm
back.
confused.
Hold on, no, because it's two separate priorities. Could you go back to the other slide then? Because when President Lambert first asked, I thought you were saying, you say right here, achieving a goal of 12,620 trees over a 10-year period. The city's responsibility would be to plant 2,524 trees annually.
It should say total. It should say total, not annually.
Okay. Okay.
So it's 2,524 trees over 10 years by the city at 254 a year.
Okay.
That makes sense, because then it's
Okay.
divided by
Yes.
10.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. So I've tried to summarize yes, I understand where the confusion is, and I apologize for that.
Is
I think it's by this group.
everyone happy? Should we take a vote of all the commissioners? Should we take a vote of all the commissioners? Do we?
Couldn't get beyond that, Mayor.
Okay, all right. I noticed that. I noticed that.
Explain it to us
All right.
further, so-
All right. In the interest of time, I've moved on to the private sector, which is responsible for the lion's share. And why is that? Because most land in the city is on private property. It's not owned by the city. You don't control all of the private property. So we're really looking to the public to take on planting trees in their yards, helping to take care of trees in their tree lawns, really making sure that the public is part of this strategy. And then there's a number of actions underneath that. I'll just touch on a couple of them. One is a homeowner assistance program to deliver and plant larger trees. So if you think about like an elderly person or a person who is not familiar with tree planting, they've never planted a tree, to provide that assistance. Then also partnerships with HOAs and nonprofits and commercial entities, having sort of mini master plans, so neighborhood by neighborhood plans for where trees can go. And we did see a lot of interest by the public in being part of this, so it would really be a public campaign. And then tree giveaways, creative events, and slogans, so a whole PR approach to this. Objective C, increase the lifespan of existing trees on public lands by strengthening the city's ordinances, development codes, and management practices. So this gets to your earlier question. Are we going to look at what kind of trees, how they're cared for, are they going to live? Was it a good investment? Adopt new standards for adequate soil volume in tree pits. So when you put trees in the sidewalk, are we giving them enough room to survive more than 5 to 7 years? Let's make sure that investment lasts 50 years. Utilize new technologies such as underground structures. Have standards for tree planting care and maintenance on city property, so really strengthening what you're requiring contractors to do. And then replant after any storm losses. Objective D, increase community awareness and stewardship. So this is really that part where we motivate the public. We recommend having a tree advisory board to assist with a goal, campaign, and engagement. It's pretty common for cities of your size, even cities half your size or a third your size, to have a tree board. And that is the group of citizens who go out and advocate every day with their neighbors and colleagues. Consider having a community forester position. So I've already mentioned this once before. That's the person who would be responsible for doing this education campaign and doing all that outreach to local businesses. And then assistance for people unable to afford the costs for taking care of public trees. So for example, a tree in front of their house that might have a limb that's looking dangerous. And then increase penalties for lack of compliance. So making sure that you have the right kind of penalties in place so that it's not simply seen as a cost of doing business. And then, of course, the campaign. And then finally, objective E, increase tree retention and conservation before, during, and after new development. So adopting actual standards for how trees should be planted on private sites. That's having a schematic that shows this is how it should be planted, this is how deep, this is how it gets mulched. Survival bonds posted for trees. So currently you would have a bond to make sure the stormwater facilities are working. Well, let's make sure the trees are not dead 6 months later. So that's a common problem where someone plants a tree inappropriately or in the wrong place or at the wrong time of year. Then training for code enforcement staff so that they know what to look for when they're going on a development site to see if the tree's healthy. And then one thing that came up specifically from staff was require elevation changes to be shown on site plans. So if they're moving the height of the land up to get base flood elevation higher, then they want to also note if there's a tree on site, because it probably would be better to move the tree or remove the tree than just bury it. It won't last there. And then standards for root protection. So I took some photos of, trenching and utility installation where the roots had been ripped and the trees probably won't make it. So making sure that we do our utility construction correctly. That's just having standards in place. Objective F, monitor the achievement. So I think that that's the most important in a way, making sure that we are tracking how we're doing, create a new map in 4 or 5 years to see how did you do. Did you meet your goal? Are you halfway there? Are you a third of the way there? How many trees can we see now showing up in the city? If canopy decline actually continues, if we're not hitting that target, what are the reasons? And can we adapt actions or take new actions? So we don't want to just wait a decade and then say, shoot, we didn't make it, right? We want to know why. We want to do adaptive management. And then if we have a storm, knock wood, no big storms, but if that happens, then we want to have a plan to recover our canopy. So the tree team, that you already have an interdisciplinary team, multi-department team within the city, that's great. That's very progressive. You already have that collaboration going on. They could engage with a new tree board and a community forester to develop a work plan to meet years 1, 2, 3, 4, and onward goals. So we basically made a set of strategies for 5 years and beyond. All right, recommended next steps. We recommend that you adopt the canopy plan, your goal of 1% increase, and the new strategies I proposed this morning. Task staff with plan implementation, and then hoping that in the future you would be able to create a community forester position to manage this whole program so that we do indeed meet the goal that we are recommending here today. And with that, that is the conclusion of the presentation. I'll take any questions or leave it to discussion.
Thank you very much for that very thorough report. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I walked here this morning from City Place, and I think the whole way I thought we really need more shade trees here. Most people downtown would agree that they would do just about anything to have more shade, and I think the business owners too. In order for us to have the walkable city, it needs to be cooler. But in other neighborhoods, for example, in the historic Northwest, I think before COVID there was some kind of, I think it was the heat map determined that maybe the historic Northwest was one of the areas that needed the most shade, or that was the hottest in the city. And then COVID came, and so none of the trees got planted there that were planned for. Then a couple of years went by after COVID. The trees were that we had purchased the trees. We were going to put them in, different neighborhoods, areas in the Northwest, and then none of the neighbors wanted them because the trees that they have there are growing into the poles and the lines, and there's not a lot of owners there, so it's often left to absentee landlords to make these decisions of whether trees are needed. And you mentioned that wildlife is one of the benefits of trees, and in that neighborhood, that is not a benefit, but the wildlife does, find the trees an appealing place to live. But I guess my question about this plan is that every neighborhood in our city is not the same. So. Sure. We might have a neighborhood that is the hottest neighborhood in our city, but they would rather have new sidewalks rather than to have new trees. And so I guess I want to understand, when you talk about the plan implementation, what does that look like? Because obviously we want all of the neighborhoods in our city to be cool, but some of them don't have the same ability to manage these trees as other neighborhoods like El Cid that, is dying to have, a program like this. So I guess if you could talk a little bit more about whether or not the plan that you are recommending is, citywide, is it neighborhood by neighborhood, or is it for us to decide how we're implementing the plan, or, which neighborhoods, the forester position might be fantastic, that can they be full-time maintaining trees in some of the neighborhoods while the neighbors in other neighborhoods might want to manage their own trees. I guess if you could just talk about how the specifics that you're recommending for this plan.
Yeah, so this plan is not a tree master plan. We weren't hired to create that. That would be a plan where you literally said, this is where every single tree is going. So what we've provided for you is that data: which are the hottest neighborhoods, where would you plan to soak up the most stormwater, where would you plant trees for walking to school, et cetera. But it would take the tree team to sit and actually say, okay, we've got this many trees per year, where should we do those efforts? The reason I recommended a community forester is because you have to have those conversations with neighbors. So when you were talking about trees up in the wires, trees in the, hiding the light poles, that maybe, irks the police because that's causing a dark spot, or they can't, a security camera's blocked or something. That's why we need more intentional planting, so that we don't put it's right tree, right place is the mantra. So in terms of a neighborhood has a high proportion of renters, in the past what we've done is reach out to the landlords and work with them to get permission if the tenant is interested. But again, what I just said, that's a lot of shoe leather. That's boots on the ground. That's people going door to door and talking to neighbors. And that's why we believe that this effort to really roll it out would require more staff than what you currently have available to do that community outreach.
If I could just add to that, I think the point here is that we're just kind of.
Victor, just state for the record since we're being taped.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Victor Carosi, Public Utilities Director, City of West Palm Beach. With regard to this presentation, what we're here talking is more about the approach. So why we have different scenarios, different objectives, and obviously it's a long-term process. And I think the most important takeaway from this is that there's not one specific way to accomplish a goal should the City Commission choose to help and establish a goal. Planting trees is very difficult in different neighborhoods. There are many, many different constraints. What we're offering is different strategies, and then we can establish potentially, if the Commission feels, whether there be a team, there be a board, there be a staff position, that would then help to take that a little bit further. As Karen noted, right tree, right place. It talks about a short tree, an area that have wires, or in a big tree that has space to grow. So there's a lot of dynamics to it. As Mayor mentioned earlier, what type of trees? All that all depends. Are you in an area with wetness? Are you in an area that's dry, high winds, whatever it might be? So this is not going to be a specific plan. This is plant the tree here. It's more right now we're trying to get that roadmap, get the Commission's buy-in, and see if there's something that we can then take a little bit further, whether it be developing ordinance, if we could figure out a way, working with the city administrator, if there's a way to finance it a little bit further. These are all different strategies, and I think the important takeaway here is to understand the different strategies and how the City Commission might offer to us as a team going forward, and certain strategies that they feel are appropriate for the city to move forward with.
All right. Any other, Commissioner Ward?
Thank you. And I do like the concept of tracking, because we do give away a lot of trees, and you're right, we're not following up at what happened with those trees. And so if we're getting that information, I think it's easy for us to follow up with the person after a specific period of time to say, hey, is that tree still alive? Did it work? And what our other options are. Are you, in other communities, when it comes to the plantings that we're doing, like as a city, whether in the swales, the one comment that I do find, and I agree with Commissioner Fox's commentary about it's different city by city. I think I mentioned that the last time you were here, is that one of my neighborhoods with a strong association worked with our staff, created an entire plan. They went out, planted them, and they're going to take over. That it made me a little bit nervous, because it's like the sustainability of that association has to be strong. And where there aren't associations and strong associations in some of the either in the older neighborhoods, they're like, I don't want to be taking care of, I don't want to trim these trees, and I don't want to deal with these trees in my swale. Are you finding recommendations as far as how do we fill that gap? Are we hiring tree trimmers again? Are we doing those things to make sure that in the swales, when I send out information about, hey, this is what you have to do, it's still kind of confusing to people, and to understand, can I cut this tree? How far can I trim this tree? When can I trim this tree? Am I going to get a fine for trimming this tree? And so that all is, I understand why you're saying a community position to explain those things, but how do we get to that next level of people saying, okay, I'll take this tree because I don't have to maintain it to that level?
Yeah, so if you had a neighborhood, for example, that where people, I'll give you an example of a true, I have lots and lots of case studies. So one is a neighborhood where it had a lot of elderly folks, and they were willing to take the trees, but they didn't feel like they could rake them. We looked for some funding and found a grant to have an after-school program where teenage boys, who would sometimes be getting up to mischief, instead became the raking team. And we had them deployed across the neighborhoods, and they had a great time. They earned some pocket change. They stayed out of trouble, and built relationships with the elders. So there are, for every problem, there's a unique solution. We wrote a guide on how to launch community tree campaigns, as with all of these kind of ideas in it. So we know that each year the staff would have a work plan and think about how are they going to get this done. But yes, there'll be a neighborhood where, let's say, a tree fell, and everyone remembers that tree fell on Mrs. Smith's house, so we are scared of trees. So that maybe that tree was unhealthy. Maybe that, so in this program, we did recommend perhaps establishing a fund so that there's a low-income person who can't afford to trim that limb that looks sketchy, that there would be a fund that they could tap to help afford that. So lots of different ways to approach this. But understanding every neighborhood is absolutely unique. Everyone has different experiences. And then, of course, you have folks who've moved to Florida from somewhere else, and they don't understand the weather or the vegetation. So lots of education needed.
President Lambert.
Thank you. I appreciate the attention that we're giving to this as a city, because I think nationwide, worldwide, unfortunately, it's not getting any cooler. It's only getting hotter. And so I'm grateful we're setting time, energy, and money towards this. I guess my comment is more just a comment to staff, and I appreciate the sentiment, right tree, right place. I too have heard from residents who are concerned, and I've heard a statement such as, trees are great, just not right now, because they're dealing with some rodents or some other, maybe unwanted animals that are living in, the trees. And so one thing I would just ask of staff would be that as we're working with these communities, I definitely don't want their sentiment of just not right now to mean not ever. Let's work with our other departments and make sure that it's a collaborative approach so that we can put trees in the areas that need it the most. And so I'm grateful for these reports. I did have a question, and I don't know if you can go back to the slide with the heat index. It was like your third slide.
I have a slide that actually shows the city, the hot parts of the city. I could just open that.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can get to that.
So just to the west of the two larger lakes in the city, Lake Mangonia, it's more yellow there, and the same, I think it's Clear Lake, just a little bit south of that. I was curious, was that intentional? Is that more residential that there's more trees there?
Why is it coming up that color? Why is it a little cooler on the
just to the west
side
of the
Yeah.
lakes? Yeah.
That probably has there's a complex dynamic that happens with open bodies of water. They add a cooling effect, but I think you may be seeing the effect also of prevailing winds coming off the ocean, coming this direction and pushing that way. So that's just the heat signature that came off the satellite. So we used satellite imagery and looked at various different days in West Palm Beach to see where those heat signatures were the highest.
Thank you.
Plus those two communities, I think one is Bear Island, the other one is the village area. Both of those are a little less dense as far as homes go, so there's a little bit more opportunity for larger trees to be able to grow in those areas. I think you're also seeing the direct benefit of the trees in those communities compared to some properties more towards the downtown core where there's more density and a little less opportunity for tree planting.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can see these folks right here have trees right along the water, so they're probably getting some also additional cooling effects from just how they're managing their vegetation.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. If you could go back to the slide with the recommendations, please.
Oh, my. Theoretically.
Sorry to have you juggling.
No,
all
that's
over.
fine. This computer does not like opening PowerPoint. So let's go to the end.
And the slide was just a visual, but my comment is that based on the information that you've presented and the recommendations that you've made, in order to move forward in a responsible manner, the forester position is actually pretty tied to the approval of this strategic plan, because it's a key component in ensuring that the neighborhoods are engaged and people have an opportunity to say whether or not they want the trees in their area, and to have that outreach and communication and to develop a plan is what I saw in on that slide. So the forester is the person that's going to help answer some of the questions that have been asked of you this morning.
Yeah, that person will be responsible for shepherding this plan, working with the tree team within the city. I can tell you that right now, when the tree team meets, they will talk about, we're doing a project in this park. Is there room for trees there? Could we squeeze some in? They workshop that in the meetings. So they're actively always trying to think about, or there's room for trees downtown as part of a streetscape project or something. But you won't be able to get that public component. I think that will be the hardest thing to reach without an additional person whose job is to go to those neighborhoods, sit in that neighborhood meeting, talk to Mrs. Smith or whoever, and work through what those issues are.
It's I think the next slide that, oh no, there it is. I see it. I see the forester down there. Okay.
Any other
So to be clear, you can launch this project now without the forester existing, but we do believe that in the near term, that would need to be a position that you would consider funding. Even if it's not in this year's budget, maybe it's next year's.
Don't we have on staff a chief arborist or something like that?
We do. I believe we have that position in development services. And in Parks and Recreation as well?
Okay.
Yes, you do have people in the city who are very qualified, certified arborists. But when we talk about the strategy, if you talk to some of the park staff, their days are just full with just responding to complaints or needs or issues or a limb that's hanging into the right of way. So they don't have extra time to do that proactive work that's necessary to make this really go.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you so much for your report, and we will certainly take a look at that and act on the recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll now turn to the capital improvement program update. Vladimir and Kevin. CIP this one right here. Just hit enter to move forward. Yeah, it's just set it up for you.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Kevin Volbrick, Director of Engineering Services. Myself and Vladimir Janot, the Capital Improvement Plan Manager for the city in the Engineering Department, are going to give you a presentation this year on our fiscal 25 and fiscal 26 Capital Improvement Program. We've been very busy this year. It continues to get busier and busier, and it makes things a lot more challenging, but yet I think we've made lots of progress over the last several years, and particularly this past year. And this forthcoming year, I think we're going to make a big improvement that is going to be noticeable, much more noticeable than it has been. Just as a summary, this fiscal 25, we've been really focusing on reevaluating what our pavement conditions are. We did complete that last year, or this past year, and our road improvement program, I think, is being picked up in a much faster pace than it was previously. Just this past year, we spent about $3.6 million and paved about 4 miles of roads. Next year, we plan on spending about $4.8 million and paving 6 miles, and then continuing to increase that number so we can start catching up with the areas that need to be redone. Overall, between this year, fiscal 25 and fiscal 26, we intend on completing about 97 projects worth about $96 million. And so it's a very ambitious and very strategically planned program that we intend to implement as closely to our plan as possible. And I'm going to turn it over to Vladimir to go through all the details with you. So, Vladimir?
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, mayors and commissioners and everybody. My name is Vladimir Janot. I'm the Capital Improvement Plan Manager for the city. And today we'll continue talking about what we accomplished and what we will look forward to accomplish next fiscal year. And we have an agenda that will go into the background of the CIP program. We'll also recap the FY25 and look at some overview of FY26, and we'll also discuss some future funded projects that are part of the capital plan. So first of all, talking about recently, we put together a committee, a CIP committee that's comprised of those individuals. Public Works, we saw a benefit of adding that member to our committee, so so we decided to do so. So that's what this is highlighting. Then next, we have developed a prioritization criteria on what project goes first, things like that, and how that project makes it to the capital improvement program. And this is the list of those items that are considered when we talk about ranking those projects. And this year, we adding the compliance to the mobility plan, which is which will be an additional source of revenue, potential of millions of dollars that can be added to the capital program based on that item when we consider projects that qualify and meet that goal. Also, we do have outreach program as part of the CIP. We have the website. We issue notices to the neighbors whenever upcoming project is gonna impacting them, help them understand what that project is and how they can get in or out of their properties, things like that. We issue press releases. We also have groundbreaking ceremonies. Most recently, we had one for Curry Park. And also, we do have ribbon cutting ceremonies. And one that is upcoming is the North Shore Bridge, even though it was done by FDOT, but as the city being part of that, that is upcoming in the month of September. And we talked about the CIP website. That is updated every 3 months. So we updated that back in May this year. So now we are back on the time to work on getting those updates done to the website by the end of September. And also, not only we have that website, Kevin also alluded earlier to the pavement condition index that was done. We do have a website on the engineering also that is available for the public to view and see what is the rating on the street and what's coming up. And we plan each time we complete a street to get that updated as well. So in the capital improvement program, we have a total of $339 million that is currently budgeted. And this gives you a breakdown of where those funds are coming from, the gas tax, public utility funding, the CRA funding, parking administration, as well as grants. And when the slide talks about the grants and some of the values of those grant dollars. For example, Curry Park has $21.4 million of grant funding in there. And beneath that, those are all the various grants that are involved in that project. We also get grants from Florida Department of Transportation in about $2.2 million. The Safe Street for All, about $280,000. Railroad Crossing, and so on and so forth. And we have another Florida Commerce, $3.9 million that covers hardening for the fire stations. So with that, now we'll go into the overview of the capital improvement, the projects that we have completed this year and that are still remaining to be completed before the end of this fiscal year. So that's total about 38 projects that values about $24.7 million. And the graph kind of shows basically where those projects are in terms of status. About 68 of them already completed, and the remaining 32% is either in progress in various phases. And the breakdown of how those projects by dollars is in all the distributed within the city. So now we'll go to the list, and so this first one will talk about all the completed projects and some of the pictures that kind of highlight what the status are. For example, we have the first one, the stormwater rehabilitation on Pinewood. That one was completed. Pinewood Avenue sewer replacement from 36th to 43rd, completed. Spruce Avenue sidewalk replacement from 13th to 21st Street. We have Flotilla stormwater improvement, Roosevelt Valley State ADA and traffic calming, Apoi Park parking lot improvement, Wildermere Road improvement from Dixie to Olive. We have Howard Park tennis court, the Parker Avenue storm sewer rehab from Avenida to Paseo Palmera, Pineapple Park stormwater improvement, Dreher Park soft trail milling and paving. We have Hunter and Lake intersection drainage improvement, the Coleman Park Community Center and gym addition that was completed. We earlier talked about the North Shore. That one is managed by FDOT, but that's part of our program. That's completed. The H Street Waterman improvement, Windsor Avenue improvement from 10 to 11th Street, various milling and resurfacing project, for example, 57th Street. We have Churchill Road, Colonial Road, Beverly Road, Francis Street. We have Palm Beach Lake Service Road from Okeechobee to Spencer, Washington Road milling and resurfacing. We did Linda Lane, Dyer Road. We had also completed the Jose Marti Park fitness trail equipment. So those 26 projects are completed, and now we'll move on to the ones that are remaining to be complete. There are about 12 of them, and we have Beautiful Avenue for milling and resurfacing, the Spruce Avenue milling and resurfacing, Saratoga Road, that's close to being done, Florida Avenue milling and resurfacing, 35th Street, 34th Street, currently ongoing the Coleman Park Pavilions, Tamarind Avenue sanitary sewer rehab from Ivernia to Highways, that's still going. Clematis Street header curb, currently ongoing. Dreher Park restroom, that's close to be completed. 2 of the 3 restrooms that were being installed are finalized out. The 3rd one should be done within the next couple of weeks. K Street repump, Georgia Avenue stormwater rehab from Hollywood Place to Roseland Drive. And that completes all the projects for FY25. And I don't know if there are any questions, and we can move on to FY26.
Related question, I think. You mentioned earlier about road repavement, et cetera. We have some kind of assessment that we do to determine which roads are in the worst condition, et cetera, right? It's probably not part of this report. Is there a place on our website where the public can see the results of that assessment and kind of identify where their particular street ranks? Do we publicize that information at all?
Yes, Mayor, yes. We did the pavement condition assessment, which we presented back earlier, I think it was March this year. That report is available on the website, basically a summary of it where we highlight each street and their rating, and the public can have access to that. It's on our engineering website. That was shared also, but we can also share it again, that way the public can access that information. Okay,
thank you. President Lambert, then Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. I feel like I know the answer to this question is already, it's complicated, but I'm gonna ask it anyways, just in case you have a more specific answer. I'm curious, on average, what is the amount of time it takes from initial planning of a project to completion?
That, so it depends on the project. So some projects, milling and resurfacing, that's something that we can quickly get from planning to completion within maybe a few months, especially when we have contractors that are already pre-selected. But when we have projects that are complex, I'll mention, for example, the Gens Park project. That takes probably maybe 5 years or more to get that completion. By the time we get community input, getting a consultant to design, then getting a contractor on board, and then get the project done. So those can vary from simple to complicated projects.
Thank you. Follow-up, Mayor?
Yes.
As part of, I appreciate that, and that was a great answer to a complicated question. As part of the process of tracking progress, do we also track that, hey, this is well over the expected time frame that this might take, and acknowledge those setbacks?
Yes, we do. And as we mentioned, every project is challenged, and sometimes the challenge could be somewhat that's external, that we found items that even though we spent years of researching, trying to get all the pre-data, but we do encounter certain things, and when those come into the projects, we work with the contractors in trying to get them either back on schedule or whatever the next scheduled completion date to try to maintain that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your efforts on that.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. And to follow up on the mayor's question, I know that people can go and look at what the condition is, but I know when you presented to us that you guys were going to target it in a specific way that was also discussing the walkability, how often people are traveling on the street. And I was nervous about that because people aren't traveling on certain streets because they know they're bad. So I don't know if we've ever gotten a follow-up on what the targeted streets will be based upon. Is it just road condition, or are you still building in these other things? I feel like that was a discussion that I don't know we got a follow-up on exactly of what that plan is based upon that condition.
I can lead. So we'll talk about that also in the future side of the presentation. But the goal is that after really sitting down and analyzing, so having the PCI is a good tool, but we want to also analyze other factors, as you mentioned. But also what we found that probably would be best is that when we go into the neighborhood, we tackle as much as the streets as possible within that neighborhood, that to avoid further disruption. If we were to go, for example, on Pinewood, do 32nd to 33rd, then go 38th to 45th, it's not consistent, and we get the value of the project may increase because of multiple mobilization. So we look at the program as a whole for neighborhood and then tackle that so that we can have a better benefit, and then one neighbor doesn't say, oh, my street looked as bad as this, why not mine? So that's how we see that the program will be more effective in tackling neighborhoods.
Thank you. I'm glad I can tell you know me because you brought up Pinewood.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions before he continues? Okay, proceed.
Thank you. So for FY26, we're looking at about 59 projects that will be completed, and that totals about $71.2 million. And most of those projects, as the status, are in either study planning, but despite that, a lot of them, we feel like we will get them completed. So those projects that we're mentioning for FY26, so we have Spruce Avenue. There's some water improvement from 46 to 57. The tidal valves, Phase 2E, the various intersections that we are looking to get those implemented. The Northmore Neighborhood Road and Sidewalk Improvement. Bryan Chapel Pier Replacement. Lift Station 47 and 76 Rehab. We have the Chase Avenue and Trinity Place Streetscape. The Clematis Garage Repair. The re-roof of Fire Station number 7 and number 2. Parker Avenue Utility Improvements. Tidal Valve Phase 2C, that is Flagler and various intersection in the south end. We have the Palm Beach Lakes and Congress Avenue utility relocation. This one is being managed by Palm Beach County, but the city is in coordination with them and also funding into that project. 18th Street Stormwater Improvement, the Fleet Fuel Site Upgrade, North Shore Neighborhood Lighting, Village Paws Parking Lot Addition, Fire Station 6 Hardening, Sapodala Avenue Waterman Looping from Banyan to 2nd Street, Flagler Drive Underground Utility Hardening, the Gens Park Community Center renovation, as well as the Gens Park Community Center, the tennis center, Lift Station 52 improvement, 36th Street Utility improvement, Lift Station 23 Forceman improvement, Washington Road and Pine Terrace, Roosevelt Estate 7th Street sidewalk replacement, Bill Moss Soccer Field improvement, Lake Avenue Stormwater Rehab, and South Olive tennis court. So 30 major projects. And then now we'll talk about the milling and resurfacing program that we alluded to a little bit earlier. We mentioned on March 10th, we presented the findings of the Pavement Condition Index, PCI, and we subsequently developed a 10-year program on how to tackle all the road that needed to be milled and resurfaced. And the 10-year program will address anything below 70 on the PCI. So FY26, our goal is to get 6 miles of road paved, and FY27, 9 miles. So FY26, all of the roads that we're planning on repaving is already planned, and we'll go over that list. FY27, that's what we'll work on, and then we'll present that also to you, so you keep you up to date as to how we putting that program to the forefront.
Before you move on, and this is just a request for information, I've been receiving a number of inquiries about the status of South Flagler repaving. Can you just give me a report or where that ranks on this list, and maybe when and if it might be teed up?
Okay. Do you know?
Yeah, Mayor. This is Kevin Volbrecht, Director of Engineering. There's a section of South Flagler, basically from Monceau Road up to Barcelona, that we're planning on repaving. The area north of that has still got a lot of development going on all the way up to Okeechobee, and that will probably be somewhat subsequent to that. We were planning on starting that work this year. However, as one of the programs in our capital improvement, we have these 2 tidal valve projects that are going to be undertaken. Those are both grant-related projects. They've been out to bid. We have a contractor on board. We're going to get started on that work before the end of this year, probably finish up sometime early next year. And once those are completed, because the intersections are going to get torn up so that we can put in new piping and everything like that, we don't want to go do that, repave the road, and then have it all tore up. So we're going to defer that particular section of Flagler until that work gets done. And that's just an example of the type of coordination that needs to be considered when we do a road, because there may be some prerequisite work that needs to be addressed first, and we want to make sure that we do that. So when everything's all said and done underground and the roads aren't flooding anymore because we've got tidal valves in there, and then we're going to have a nice even surface on top of it when we're all said and done. So that's what's going to happen with that.
Okay, thank you. President Lambert.
Thank you. I have another question, but related to what you just said, Kevin. I'm curious, by doing it that way, are we also saving money?
We actually would be, because otherwise we'd have to pay the contractor doing the tidal valve work to pave like 50 feet on both sides of that. We would be saving, we're going to do, obviously restore the road back so that it can be driven on. But instead of investing the money in doing that and then doing it again, it is going to be more economical for us to coordinate that to do subsequently.
Okay, great. And then, Vladimir, my question is, and I don't know if you know this offhand, but I remember in the presentation that you gave us in March, we saw a chart that showed us the percentage of roads that were in each of these categories. Do you know at the end of 27, with 9 miles scheduled to be repaved and remilled, and the 6 miles in 26, where we'll fall percentage-wise?
I would have to follow up with you on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, proceed.
Okay. Thank you. So those roads that we're mentioning on the resurfacing program. So we have, for example, as we talked earlier, Pinewood from 27th Street to 30th, and also from 32nd to 38th. So that's one that would be a group of projects to entertain. And we have a group of them from on 38th Street, 51st Street, 42nd, 39, 38, 37 from Pinewood to Broadway. We also have Windsor Avenue from 37 to 39th Street, Division Avenue from Grant to 22nd, 19th Street from Tamarin Avenue to the end of the road, Forum Place from Congress to the end, and also Forum Place from Palm Beach Lakes, Forum Way from Palm Beach Lakes to Forum Place. And also Indian Road from Gardenia to the end, 5th Street from North Flagler to the end, North Flagler Drive, a section of it from 7th to 9th Street. We also have Douglas Avenue from 3rd to Palm Beach Lakes, Division Avenue from Palm Beach Lakes to 15th Street. And those ones, those two projects, we are certainly planning with the CRA on those two projects to do somewhat of a total assessment, and when we pave that, we have a beautiful street. Also, Detura Street from South Olive to Flagler Drive, Ivernia from South Olive to Flagler, 4th Street, Tamarind to Rosemary, Avenida Alegre from Georgia Avenue to FEC, Coniston Road, Russell Avenue, Dawson Avenue, Miller Avenue, Avon Road, Paseo Andalusa, and Bradley Court. So those are 29 projects that we're looking to get completed that will complete the 6 mile of roadway that we plan on doing next fiscal year. And so now we'll talk about some of the future funded projects. So in the capital project, we mentioned there are 329 million, and there are other funded projects in the capital program that are not quietly highlighted because they will not be completed within the next, either this fiscal year or next, but there are future projects that will be completed. And those will be somewhere between FY27 and FY2030. So we have, for example, some of those projects, and that total about $106.8 million of those project examples to be given. Broadway Avenue, Parker Avenue, Howard Park Community Center, 49th Street traffic calming, the seawall elevation pilot program that we have, Curry Park improvement, training facility, the Palm Beach County Australian Avenue to 45th Street. We have 2 lift stations that we're working with PBC and getting completed. We have the B line, State Road 710, and also Fern Street crossing. So those projects are in the program, but you won't see them until further into the years to come. So,
Yes.
Good morning, Armando Fana, Assistant City Administrator. And just so you understand, a lot of those projects, they're not dormant. They are in design stage right now. Some of them have been partially designed already. So as Vladimir mentioned before, depending on the complexity of the programs, they could take 3 to 5 years. You have permit issues sometimes with other agencies you have to go through. So these are actively being worked on, not just waiting for a particular fiscal year.
thank you. And this concludes our presentation, and we'll consider any further questions that anyone.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. When you mentioned the work with the CRA, is that just going to the budget items? Is that $1 million that they were funding for the pavement?
That is correct.
There's more to.
Yes.
Thanks.
Any other, Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about the tidal valve program? And I know that there's several phases. Will we be finishing the tidal valve program with all the phases that you've mentioned here? I think there's a couple of areas downtown and in Providencia Park in particular that, like the slightest bit of rain floods the entire neighborhood, and there's only one entrance for those residents to get in and out of their homes. So I didn't see that particular neighborhood in any of your things that were listed here, but I'm just curious how you're deciding, I guess, which neighborhoods will be addressed first. And it's just been a long time coming for those residents especially. And if you could talk a little bit about when the rest of the city will be completed for those tidal valves.
Yeah, Commissioner Fox, Kevin Volbrecht again. These particular tidal valves that are in the program here were ones that were funded with grant assistance. It's pretty much the large diameter outfalls, plus there was ones that are located down in the El Cid area, and so those are finally getting funded and prepared to go forward. There still are a number of outfalls that we do need to address the tidal valves on. The Providencia Park area, we have been working on determining what we need to do there in order to correct that problem. And as Vladimir said, sometimes things become a little bit more complicated and it takes a little bit longer to plan. But that is going to be happening. we don't know exactly when that will be. It potentially could happen in fiscal '26, but I wouldn't want to promise that that will be, but we're going to do that as soon as possible. That's probably the next highest priority area that we do need to address. And then there's a number of other areas up and down the city coast that we still need to work on. And we sort of have a staging program of where we want to address the various ones that we haven't gotten to yet. So it is an ongoing program. I think once we get done with these ones that are currently in fiscal '26, we'll probably be about halfway done with them. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next item under Mayor Matters. Commissioners, you received an email from the city administrator on Friday afternoon concerning some budgetary information, and wanted to know if you had any questions or comments on that email, in response to that email. Okay. All right, fine, moving on. I don't have anything else under Mayor's Matters. President Lambert?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I think that in her Administrator Johnson's email, she asked for some feedback on it. Did you want that feedback now or via email?
If you have any feedback now.
Faye Johnson, City Administrator, for the record. I mean, if you are in a position to provide it now, that would be my preference.
Well, so I read the email, and so it might be helpful if we're going to have a discussion about it now, if that's what you're looking for, if you could kind of give a high-level overview and talk about the reasoning behind it. But if you're just looking for, a feeling one way or another.
Oh, sure, I'll be glad to do that. So when we had the work session, we had different commissioners who expressed a desire for a millage reduction, and then we had other commissioners who also expressed a desire to include the 5 police officer positions that were not included in the proposed budget. If you go back to what was included in the proposed general fund budget, it was a total of 25 police officers and 2 sergeants. The police asked for 30 police officers. We included 25 of those, and some commissioners expressed an interest in having the other 5 positions that were not recommended included. And I did not want to presume that the commissioners, had settled where you all were or are on moving forward with a millage reduction and or including the 5 positions that were not recommended in the proposed budget. In that, should it come up at the September 8th first budget adoption hearing, based on the minimum amount of time that finance needs to rebalance the budget, that's about 2.5 weeks. I want to avoid putting us in a position where it's the pleasure of the board when we get to September 8th to do either that millage reduction or add in those 5 additional positions, and then I am in a position where we're really having staff to literally work 12 or 14 hours to try to get the budget rebalanced. I don't want it to be lost on commissioners that if you do a millage reduction, that decreases the amount of tax revenue, and or if you add in the additional 5 officers of the 1.2 million, we're going to have to make offsetting reductions. I mean, that is just a given. It's no way that we can have less revenue and keep our expenditures at the same level, because by law they have to balance. And if the preference is, let's say, to do one or the other, we're still going to be in the same position where we have to identify offsetting reductions. So hypothetically, if you add 1.2 million for the additional 5 police officer positions, you're going to have to identify where you want to cut 1.2 million to absorb that 1.2 million we're adding. Again, I think it was pretty clear that I'm not in a position to support a millage reduction because our expenditures are outpacing our available revenue. Nor am I in a position to support adding the 5 additional police officers. When I look at trend data, we have 27 vacant officer positions, 27 total if you count the sergeants that are being added in. I don't think that we're going to fill 54 officers' positions in one fiscal year, and then if you add 5, 59. So to unravel the budget so that we can say we gave PD everything they asked for, which to me is astounding that we would fund 100% of what a department asked for. But if that's the board's preference, that's the board's preference. But to unravel a balanced budget in a very, very tight period, to bring on 5 additional officers that more than likely, based on our history, we won't bring them on board in fiscal year 26, I'm not certain what we're accomplishing by unraveling the budget to do that. So my position has not changed, but I wanted to give the board the opportunity to say, this is the direction we want to go with the budget. Here's where we want to make those reductions so that finance could have the adequate time to rebalance the budget, load up everything in Hyperion, and when the budget is presented at the first budget adoption hearing on September 8th, it would be balanced in accordance to the offsetting reductions, and we can meet the statutory requirements in terms of the deadlines.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And so I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying is you took back what you heard at the last workshop that, we wanted to look into ways to funding additional police officers. We also wanted to look into ways of millage reduction, but that based on your and the team's due diligence and significant consideration of this, that it is not your recommendation that we move forward on those at this time.
It is not my recommendation, and I don't want it to be lost on commissioners that we actually looked at a millage reduction on the front end. We have a gentleman sitting down at the table who, during the budget process and our meetings, that was one of the mayor's top priorities. I want you to present a proposed budget that includes the 3rd phase of the 4-year millage reduction plan. But in looking at how expenditures are tracking and in looking at how the critical needs of public safety are tracking, I had to have that very open and frank discussion with the mayor that I can't meet all of those goals. I can't, they're competing priorities. I can't meet the priority 1 goal of public safety given the increasing needs, and then at the same time reduce the amount of revenue to meet that goal. It's competing priorities, and that's not a message that the mayor wanted to hear. But as your city administrator who sleeps with the budget day in and day out, literally, yes. I would be remiss if I went to the mayor and said, okay, because you have tasked me and pressed me to submit to you a proposed balanced budget with a millage reduction, I'm going to do that. I had to give him my best professional advice. So we had those very delicate discussions.
I appreciate that, and I think it's really helpful hearing the detail and the detailed conversations and process that went into it, because I
You
think
don't want to hear too much of it, but
because I think we all know your passion and dedication to the budget as well as the staff's. But I think, when it's presented in such a beautiful package with a, beautiful bow on it, not hearing, all of that went into that and that level, it leads us to questions, and I am grateful for this additional information. Thank you.
yeah, Ms. Johnson is right. I've asked for a millage reduction at the very beginning of the budget process because we had done 2 millage reductions and I wanted to get another one in. But, because of the items that she identified, it just wasn't possible without some pretty draconian cuts. So I backed away from that. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much for the further explanation. I think in terms of the extra police, that's not my area of expertise. And I look at the city and the way that we're adding literally whole neighborhoods, like the Nora neighborhood that didn't exist before. It's not just more people, but an entire, literally new neighborhood that will be coming online, and the different security needs. And so I feel like whatever was recommended to us as the number of police that are needed, then I support that, because I feel like that's what the chief says. That's not my area of expertise. I would rather have more security than less. And sometimes what we're looking at is having private security just to supplement the police. And in those cases, I would much rather just have been funding extra police officers. But I would also like to have a millage rate reduction, but I understand we have all the priorities and we have to keep the services that our neighbors are expecting from us. So I guess just in terms of the police, I would like to hear further from someone in the police department, if that's possible, just to say, to your point, we're not going to be able to hire 54 new officers maybe this year, so maybe those extra 5 officers can be looked at again next year, or if we're having a lot of success with hiring, maybe there's another opportunity mid-year to come back for funding. If possible, I'd like to understand that better. And also circling back to the fire department request, that I know that we hopefully will be receiving a grant, but then if we don't, we don't have other departments in the city other than maybe parking that we're asking to fund themselves. So, I would just want to keep that on the table, that if for any reason the grant writing wasn't successful, that we have to keep in mind that that's an important component of our budget going forward, that we might have to make modifications once we hear how the outcome of that grant is resolved. Thanks.
Well, I'll yield to the mayor on whether or not the chief comes up on the other 5 positions and how that would affect their ability to bring on, which at that point it'll be 59. But as it relates to fire, the SAFER grant, if in the unfortunate circumstance the grant is not approved, what we would do is then to sit with the fire chief as well as the finance team, and we will go back through determining what options we have to try to then do some type of mid-year or budget amendment to include funding for officers. There are 4 firefighters in the fire assessment side of the budget, but we have to take it in sequence to see what happens with the SAFER grant, but we would be coming back to the board.
Chief, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to address, you've heard the conversation. I don't know if you want to address all or any portion of the conversation with respect to number of officers you think you can hire and your needs going forward, and how this budget will address your concerns.
Chief Tony Araujo, Chief of Police, West Palm. I agree 100% with the city administrator. The best year we had historically looking back, I believe was 31 officers that we hired in a fiscal year. We redesigned our hiring practices at the police department. I think we're going to work hard to fulfill the 25. As far as the safety of the city, I think I said this before in open forum, we are not understaffed in deployment. The city is covered, every neighborhood, every special event. My concern is strategically thinking and posturing ourselves forward, the sustainability of doing all the above moving forward because of quality of life of the police officers. We can do it for a season, 2 seasons, a long period. But again, working very closely with the city administrator, professional staff at the city, we arrived at that number. But 5, it's really, in my professional opinion, we don't need to add the 5 this year. I'm hopeful. We're working very hard. I'm working the fellows in the blue uniforms back there very hard to get to the number that we've gotten, and then we'll move forward. I mean, staffing is not a moving number, but it does move. There's a lot of variables involved I don't want to bore you with. You know, some people have talked about so many officers per population. If you check perf, a lot of variables. Today's policing best practice requires sustainable human resource. What we used to be able to do with 2 police officers now takes 5 and a supervisor, and a call that used to take half an hour takes 2, maybe 3. Those are all the variables that we put in play. And again, I'm very comfortable with the number that has been tentatively approved. But again, service has not lapsed in the city. We're just working our officers harder. That's just the way it is. And if you're not designed as a public safety entity to function that way for a period, for a season, whatever it takes, then you're not at best practice. And we are at best practice. I hope that answers your questions.
Did that address any concerns, Commissioner Warren?
Thank you. I think that we all agree that safety is extremely important and a priority to all of us and all of our residents. I'm still very interested in understanding how we get to a particular number, whether that number, and I support an increase, and if I may finish, and I support an increase in officers. I do need to understand, though, how do we determine what the right number is so that we can determine the way forward, and what can be a reasonable expectation based on that number, based on whatever method you use to come up with.
You put a lot of contractual obligations, time off, FMLA, sick time. You check all those variables and you put it into the input. Just the general figure right now, for you to see 1 police officer on the street and patrol 24/7, we've got to hire 6 police officers. Okay, and again, there's a lot of variables that go into that staffing analysis. Calls for service, that's one variable. How many officers does it take to handle that call for service? The previous comment I made. What you used to be able to do with 2 police officers might take 4 or 5. So how much time are you taking on each call? The other issue I've talked to, and again, I just want to give you the global approach so you understand it a little bit more clearly. 30% of what we do, crime fighting, 70% is quality of life. Is it important to the city of West Palm Beach that the police department address quality of life? Yes, it is. That consumes a lot of time. And again, so there's no perfect formula. There's the variables. Time off. The average officer works over 2,020 hours a year. Okay, and what do you take with that? Our training used to be 40 hours a year. Training time for officers has considerably skyrocketed. And that's not time the officer cannot be out in patrol or do within their discipline. So all those variables play into staffing.
The reason that this is important to me to understand is I know that we have other responsibilities in the city, and to allocate for 27 officers and thinking about what that total impact is going to be with equipment, with vehicles and everything, not knowing that we'll be able to achieve that number, but have budget budgeted for it and not be able to utilize those dollars for other things that we may be able to do until we're able to staff up to 27 additional officers. Would it be an approach to consider a tier, like the goal being 27 and hiring or increasing the staff an additional 10 this year and an additional 10 the following year and an additional 7 the year, whatever the number ends up being. But is it the right approach to say that we're going to allocate for 27 officers this year, even though we're already short over 20 officers in the police force?
I mean, that certainly, is one approach that could have been taken. What I looked at in developing the recommendation for, and I'm going to say 27, although we got 25 police officers and 2 sergeants, we're talking about 27 sworn officers. And then the existing vacant positions. Based on what financially we could absorb in the proposed budget, balancing that with the board's priority of public safety being priority 1, and then also taking into consideration that as part of the proposed budget for PD, for the first time, we've included a dedicated recruitment initiative. So that has to be tested. We certainly got to see proof of concept on whether or not that would enable them to be able to bring on hopefully all 54 officers. I would not want to do this tiered approach where we do 10, 10, 7. I'd rather have the money baked in the budget and operate on best case scenario that they're gonna hit that 54 mark and bring on all of them or very close there too, but have them fully funded as opposed to doing a tiered approach, because that money would be allocated somewhere else. And I don't want to put our organization in a position where they meet the 10 and now they're ready to bring on the other 10, and now we got to go back and try to, find the money for that 10. That's too frantic of a budgeting technique and not one that I would want to put our organization into.
Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Buzzi.
Thank you. And I know I said this the last at the budget meeting is I'm not in support of a reduction in the millage. I think that you brought us a balanced budget. We have a growing city, growing populace, and a long laundry list of items that we'd love to achieve, and I just don't think this is the year. So I'm in support of your budget and not adding the additional 5 officers. I just wanted to point out while we're talking about this is that the conversations when I started, even before I was a commissioner, were we need to get up to speed. We need to add officers. And not only do we need to add officers, we need to stop the overtime because we're paying more, and then our officers are tired. And I know I just had this conversation with somebody in the private sector about hiring our officers off duty. They like it better than private security. My first response to them was, of course, they get overtime. I'm sure they like that for their wallets, but I don't want my officers looking tired, and then they're not serving us to the best of our abilities. I want us to beef up. In the interim, the conversation that we continuously had was, I understand your perspective of needing, I thought it was 5, but needing 6 behind the scenes to see. One was, that's why I've been in support of our private security, because while you guys are ramping up, I would hope that we don't have to have the budgetary item for private security. I've said that to Administrator Johnson before. I don't love seeing all these line items for private security, but we're not there yet to see the coverage that we need along the Broadway corridor, along the Dixie corridor, within our districts that have historically had issues. So to me, we've been doing that ability, we've been balancing that ability of, we'll get you your eyes and ears in the form of private security, but behind the scenes, we want that top quality, quick responses, doing your job to the highest degree, ability. And so if you need more officers, and I love the fact that you're getting a dedicated recruitment person, I think that's phenomenal, because it doesn't look great when we've got all these openings and we haven't been able to fill them yet. And we, as a body, weren't really given an explanation as to why we have not been able to fill them yet. But despite that, I'm still in favor of supplementing with private security where we need it, because I want people to see people that are watching them. I want people to know that when they're going to the stores or they're going to the local market, that we have done our duty to get you eyes and ears, so that if something goes wrong, they're immediately calling. And I think, the person I've worked most closely with is Chief Spatera on those communications to make sure that we do have those eyes and ears. So I wouldn't want us to then be unbalanced in that regard. And then hopefully maybe one day we can fill enough that we don't have to be paying for private security. But I know you get those comments just like I do in the historic Northwest. And that's why I brought up Coleman Park for that reason, is people want to see you guys. And until we get to that point of where we are fully staffed to the ability that we can see our officers, we need to be thinking about what we can do to make sure that they know that someone's watching and paying attention for their safety.
Commissioner Beduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor. First, my comments on the reduction in the millage rate. I think we all would like to, at some point, see our millage rate reduced. It seems to me, in reviewing some of the other cities' millage rates, that we're definitely among the higher of the millage rates for some of the local municipalities. So, especially in this political environment that we have, and I don't want that to be controlling, but I think we have to just tread very carefully, because at the federal level, at the state level, they're looking at government spending. They're looking at, taxation. And I think we just have to be mindful of that we don't want to bring anything negative upon us. And I think it's just a good thing to look at a minimal millage reduction, but I'm not going to push for that this year. I think that we have some challenges that we're facing, and I understand and I appreciate our city administrator's plan for adding, public safety personnel. I agree with Commissioner Ward that we need to have visibility in our neighborhoods and on the street, and until we can get to that number, and we are obviously struggling because we have 20-some vacant positions, we want to add 20-some more. As far as I'm concerned, the 5 additional is completely moot, because we can't even hire at this point. There's not enough qualified good applicants, apparently, to even fill that 54 that we need right now. So I don't think we should even be talking about the 5 additional, although I'm one that wants to see as many police officers as possible. I don't think it's an attainable number. But I think in the future, if we can look at a modest millage reduction, it would make sense. And I just hope that if it's 54 is the number, that we can come close to maybe trying to get that number of officers so that we can reduce reliance on private security. Because, it's great to have the eyes and ears, but our police officers are capable of doing so much more on the street if the situation arises. Really, a security officer's primary role is to observe and report. That's what the Florida Department of Agriculture says the security officer's primary job is, to observe and report. And they're reporting to our police. And if we don't have enough police, there's not much that can be done. So those are my comments, and thank you for listening.
Any other questions, comments on this item? All right, any other matters for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.